Welcome. This is a brief overview of yoga history and philosophy. And very brief because actually it's rather detailed, it's rather intricate and long, and so this is simply an overview and including some areas where there are some diverse opinions too. So, giving you an overview, what we're going to cover. Well, the origins of yoga as we currently understand, the writings, the earliest documented evidence around yoga, and our earliest teachers, some consideration there. So, the origins of yoga. Well, let's go first to what yoga means, and it does mean different things to different people, but certain themes come through. So, to yoke or unite, and that is the body, the breath, the mind. Union with the divine, whatever the divine means to you. A disciplined path to unite the soul with the divine, or to unite with all universal consciousness. So, where did it all start? Well, if you flip open most books about the history and philosophy of yoga, certain themes will come through that yoga began in India. Yoga began around 11 to 1500 BCE, but then also yoga began around 5,000 years ago, which, if you think about it, those numbers don't quite add up. So we already have confusion with date and also with location. What about Africa? Particularly around Egypt and Ethiopia. So there's documentation of postures which resemble physical asanas, the yoga poses, dating back over 10,000 years, along with illustrations of the chakra system from Tantric yoga. So did it really start somewhere else? The Dravidians are one of the groups of the early people in India believed to have descended from the Ethiopians. They founded the Indus Valley civilizations and flourished around 300 to 2,500 BCE. Origins in India were within the Indus Sarasvati civilization in northern India, derived from the Vedic culture. However, the Dravidians that we already mentioned, who are believed to descend from Ethiopia, developed and flourished within this civilization, so we can already see an overlap in different populations from that same area where yoga developments have understood to have come from and spread from. I came across this word or phrase, itihasa, thus it happened. So whichever roots or combined roots occurred prior to that point, thus it did indeed happen. Now, 5,000 years ago is often bandied about. We don't really know if it was 5,000 years ago. We know a lot of things happened before they were written down, but what we can certainly say is it was a very long time ago. The Vedic era, somewhere around 2,500 to 500 BCE, is certainly considered to be central in the development of yoga history and philosophy. The Vedas give their name to that era, the Vedas being the very first evidence of the writings, the teachings of course being so much older, but it was only around this time that the sages began to record their history, their evidence, their practices into the texts. Most sources in books say that the Vedas were written around 1500 to 500 BCE, but you will discover if you search this or look in other texts that some sources also state that the earliest were composed around 3000 BCE. The Upanishads formed the later portion of the Vedas, and they provided more information from the whole pre-classical period. Within that were songs, dances, hymns, poems within the ancient texts. They gave a history of the discussions between students and teachers, information that the sages had devoted their life to practicing, the practices which control the mind, the body, the senses, and how and why to enter the internal world of meditation. There are over 200 scriptures from this period, and it's really all about the essence of the universe. These date to around 800 to 200 BCE. Mahabharata. This is the world's longest literary work, and it is the oldest yogic text, mentioning yoga almost 900 times. It's the story of a great war, a great siege between the Pandavas and the Kauravas. It was to decide the outcome of who should rule Upper India, the kingdom of Bharat. And within this, some of the writings are extremely familiar to us. Arjuna being the greatest archer of his time and a Pandava, and Lord Krishna, his cousin, advisor, and incarnation of the god Vishnu. And he gives Arjuna guidance and support. The Bhagavad Gita, the very essence of wisdom. This is the 6th chapter of the Mahabharata, comprised of 700 verses. It's a dialogue between Arjuna and Krishna, bringing perspectives or practical perspectives of everyday life, including all of yoga, except of course for the physical poses themselves. It's devoted to exploring all aspects of Indian philosophical and religious approaches. But again, the time frames are confusing. So many texts say it was written around 400 BCE, between then and 200 CE, and others say it was written around 5,000 years ago. Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. This is obviously a very well-known text amongst yoga teachers, all about Raja Yoga, yoga of the mind, a collection of aphorisms or observations which in themselves are all quite short but require study for understanding and interpretation. We don't really know who Patanjali was or if it was a group of people, but the text does prioritize Raja Yoga rather than the current obsession in the West with Hatha Yoga, yoga of the body. The teachings include the 8-limbed path of yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, and within this are described the yamas, niyamas, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. The teachers that were truly paramount and essential in the development of future teachings, spreading yoga out to the world and certainly to the West, come into 2 lineages, Krishnamacharya and Sivananda. Krishnamacharya, also known as the father of modern yoga. His approach to Hatha led directly to the yoga moving to the West and to students in Western countries and continents. His style incorporated movement with breath, now known as Vinyasa, and he ran a yoga school in Mysore in India. Sivananda had a fully holistic approach to classical Hatha Yoga, focusing on toning and stretching the whole body, and his teachings have remained pretty much unchanged, stayed very much as they developed back in India in 1936. So these 2 teachers went on and had other teachers who are well known themselves. I've listed several of them here. I think it's interesting to note that Iyengar's sister was Krishnamacharya's wife as well. But most teachers now, or our teachers' teachers, can trace their lineage back through these 2 lines and through these teachers. As I said, that was just the briefest, smallest introduction to the overview of history and philosophy. Hopefully it'll give you a little flavour and somewhere to start to delve in a little more. And I plan to do a presentation in different areas in rather more detail. Thank you so much for joining me.